hope everybody like to be here today. Hello. 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 Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, okay, great. Thank you. Yes. So, sorry about that. My name is Ewuoso. I'm a brand and marketing manager with over 8 years experience managing.
Yes, we can.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Oh, I can.
All right. Thank you for that. Thank you. Okay, so I said I'm super excited to be moderating today's session because let's be honest, this topic is not just exciting, it is the future of marketing. Today we're diving into so many things, and people talk about so many amazing and interesting. Hello?
I can hear you. Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I was saying that today we're diving into something that a lot of people talk about, but few are really using the full potential. That's expanding reach with unconventional channel. And we'll be looking at the OEM, Programmatic, SDP, and publisher marketing. Now, that must sound a bit techy, right? But trust me, if you have ever asked yourself, how do we reach more people without spending a huge fortune on Google or Meta ads, then I think this section is for you. So we're stepping out of our comfort zone of the usual Google, Meta, and the rest of it. And we'll be looking at what's happening today. We'll be leveraging on the OEM platforms, those pre-installed apps, placement, and device-level strategy. And of course, the programmatic demand side platforms and publisher partnership that are not so, that are not always in the mainstream. But these platforms are seriously delivering results. Hello. Hello.
Please go
Okay.
ahead. We can hear you
Oh,
clearly.
all right. Thank you for that. So this section is essentially relevant now as brand become tighter and budgets are rising increasingly. Also, customer acquisition costs, right? And we'll be what here. Okay, and we're asking that how do we break through all this noise without burning through our marketing budgets? So we're very lucky to have this amazing panel of experts with us today. People who are not just talking about this channel, but they're actually using it. And they are working in the trenches, testing them and making them work. And today, we have two important people. We have Mr. Bukayo and Godwin here with us. How are you doing?
Doing great. Doing great. Thank you so much, Adela, for the intro.
I'm fine. I'm great. Doing well.
Hello.
We can hear you. I don't know if you can hear me, but I think we responded to you.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I think it's just a glitch.
We can hear you.
But I think I can hear you now.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. So yeah, let me start with of course, I'll just call at random. Let me start with Mr. Godswill Okwuchi. Please permit the way I called your name right. I know that's like I'm crucifying you, but sorry. Yeah. So Mr. Godwin Okwuchi is behind the operation and the scene, and Mr. Godwin has over 15 years of leading performance team and scaling an operation across sectors. He's a master of turning strategies into numbers.
Right.
At Virgin Media, he has helped brands strip waste, streamline spend, and execute at a higher level. It's such a privilege to have Mr. Godwin here today. Thank you so much for honoring this event, Mr. Godwin. Hello. Wow. Hi, Mr. Godwin, are you here?
Thank you, Adiola. Likewise. Thanks. Thank you, Adiola. Likewise here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're
Hi,
breaking
Mr.
up again.
Godwin.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Hello. Can you take that
I can
again,
hear
Mr.
Adela.
Godwin?
I think there's an issue with Godswill network, most likely.
There's an issue
But yeah,
with,
I can hear you loud
I
and clear.
see. Okay. So, and I also have an amazing person here. I mean, someone that I've always loved to meet. So I have here Bukayo Ewuoso. Is the head of business, ad tech, and marketing solution at PC Mobile, where he harnessed over 7 years of expertise in digital media, growth, and technology sales. At PC Mobile, Bukayo plays a crucial role in developing innovative marketing and business solutions that address the unique challenge of today's digital landscape. His strategic vision is instrumental in enhancing the company's offerings and driving forward an integration of advanced ad tech strategy. Yeah, you're welcome again, Mr. Bukayo. How are you doing?
Thank you so much. I'm doing good. Thank you for having me. Great,
Oh,
great.
great. Okay, so like I said earlier, we'll be covering the real life strategies, the wins, their learnings, and would leave room for questions at the end of this session. So feel free to drop those in the chat as we go. So let's dive in and explore how we can reach further, smarter, and maybe a little more unconventional. Yeah, so I like to start the stage with a quick question. So I'd like to ask you, since Godwill is not, so for now I'm just going to be, hi Godwin, are you back?
Yes, I think Godswill is trying to join back.
Okay. So Bukayo, I'd like to hear from you. What does unconventional channel mean in this current digital marketing landscape?
Yeah, so I think I actually know I think I know that most of the time when people talk about advertising channels, right, they majorly focus on staple house names that are quite easily accessible as well as you know what they're also used to. So the likes of Meta ads, so Facebook ads and Instagram ads and Google ads is where you find people most of the time, right? But there are quite a lot of channels out there, right? For us as a business, and there is TikTok ads now. For example, where at work I resell that there is Telegram ads and I'm looking at Nigeria as well as Africa as an entire landscape, right? But there's also programmatic ads, which is connecting to ad exchanges, multiple ad exchanges, and allow you to reach a wider array of audiences. There are about 37 to 38 million total social media users in Nigeria. Um, as a whole, and that's again is split across different verticals. The likes of X is about 7 million users, TikTok's about 37 million, and Facebook is about 38 to 39 million. Instagram is around 28 to 29 million of users. But when it comes to extended for programmatic, for example, now you can go up north of about reaching 65 to 70 million users of profile users in the country. Using Nigeria as an example, which means you're able to show your communication and messaging to them while they're browsing in their mobile apps or in the websites that they might be consuming, whether it's a desktop on their mobile phones. So I think there's quite a lot of unconventional sources. There is the Phoenix browser ads, there is a Boomplay, there is Critio for retargeting, there is the RCB house. There's quite a lot of them. So it's majorly I like to say look at your objective, look at what you're currently playing today and how can you leverage the gap in the middle where others aren't playing and you're able to take advantage of that at an efficient cost for your business.
I see. That's nourishing. Thank you for that, Bukayo. Hi, Godswill. Are you back now?
Yes, I am. Thank
Great.
you.
Great. So I have a quick question for you. So why do you think marketers are moving beyond traditional platform to explore the OEMs, DSP, and publisher partnership?
Okay, so basically, living the traditional platform, which keeps you kind of restricted, that keeps you kind of restricted to the kind of audience you can actually reach out to. It kind of minimizes or gives you a blanket reach whereby your numbers are minimal. And then going on to OEMs and DSPs, you can do actually specific targeting, which makes your marketing or ads campaigns more precise, and the ROI for these campaigns are better driven, results are achieved. It's more or less like let's say basic traditional newspaper ad now. Of course, people read dailies and everything, but for example, I might not like football, and then you're putting a betting ad in a newspaper, and this is me. I'm like, okay, it's just there, and I see it and I go past it. But using behavioral adaptation, target audience, and so we can actually target this specific audience using the new DSPs, the OEMs, and better, more modernized targeting. So I think that's basically the reason why people are actually moving out of the traditional scene to a more digital style of advertising.
Today's session. So I'd like to start with you, Bukayo. So at Pepsi Mobile, you've developed innovative marketing solutions. Can you share a specific example of how you've leveraged OEM partnerships to address clients' challenges and enhance their reach?
Yes, I'll give you an example, right? Thank you so much for that question. So I'll give you an example, right? We have a partnership. I mean, one of the inventories that we do have access to as a business in terms of advertising technology as a business at PC. And we rebranded to PC, by the way, from PC Mobile, right? Um, but one of the brands inventories is Boomplay. Okay, Boomplay is quite staple house for quite a number of people, right? In Nigeria, there are about 18 million active daily monthly active users on Boomplay in Nigeria today, where 76% of that audience is between 18 to 35, 18 to 35 years. So what that shows you basically is that there's quite a number of people um, that are young on Boomplay. In fact, most of the audience on Boomplay sits as a young audience. So how have we been able to leverage it, and what have we looked at this doing? So we've done campaign, for example, for a betting company in this situation, right? The partnership with us allows us to run campaigns on Boomplay where users are able to see advertising and achieve the marketing campaigns and objectives that these brands are trying to do. So we are using the case study of the betting company, for example, like I mentioned, right? The key thing for them was to drive top of the mind awareness within their audience. So we did a proper segmentation first to say, how do we define the persona we're trying to reach? And once we're able to do that, we're then able to place the banners in strategic points in app when people are listening to music. So in a situation where you pick up your phone, you want to listen to a music, you play a song by Davido. Typically, when you're now playing, you see, the Davido album or the album art, as like we call it, right? But in this situation, you'd actually see the banner of the campaign instead of seeing the album art. It doesn't interrupt the experience of listening to the music, but in this situation, you can actually see the direct campaign. Once you go away from the now playing section and you're trying to go through the library to find another music, you get to see the banner again as an anchor. So it's stuck there at the bottom of the screen. What it allows us to do and allowed us to do for that particular campaign was we were able to drive out, top of the mind awareness. Brand recall was a lot higher for the brand in terms of the betting situation here, and that was able to improve their conversion rate across other channels. When people click on the banners as well, it's able to direct them, you know, to that specific offer page and not the landing page. Because I see a lot of times, people send people to the homepage, but to the specific offer that we were trying to communicate for that campaign. So we've seen this work because Boomplay has partnership with the entire Transnet Transsion group of OEM devices. So the likes of Techno, Infinix, Itel, right? They already come default with Boomplay devices, and so when people are actually using those devices in this situation and listening to music, we are able to be in that consumer touch point and being able to influence people's decision at that point. So that's an example of the case study, specifically to the OEM. If I give you another one that has to speak with for example, we're working with a crypto client. Again, NDAs are without mention. So we're working with a crypto client in this situation and then Quidax, right? And what they're majorly driving at is to see how much acquisition they're able to drive. So again, using an example of OEM, right? We have access to Phoenix Browser, for example. And what Phoenix Browser users are, are people that want to access the internet without having to use the likes of Safari and Chrome like we typically use today. So a proxy browser to help them manage the data spend, but still able to access, all communications to the internet that they currently do have today, right? So that's the core. So we're able to use that as a channel to drive, user acquisition. So from app installs to actual user signups, and then looking to optimize that towards trading users as a business. So just give you an example of, because again, the traction devices when it comes to OEMs come pre-installed with Phoenix Browser, and then users are being able to activate it from that point and then through advertising, messaging, and the likes. So I hope this gives you, quite some angle of how we in partnership has been able to, help clients achieve certain challenges and enhance their reach in the market.
Said it all, and how we can actually leverage um, using the OEM partnerships. I think there's something actually the transmission devices actually also do, which is called, I think, over the air, and this is very useful for clients that maybe just want to actually showcase their apps without going through the normal Play Store drive. We can actually just push the app directly there. So this is another way that OEM partnership has actually fine-tuned campaigns and ensure a better result for advertisers and publishers as well.
Incorporate programmatic DSP.
Okay, all right. So at Bracken Media, we actually even have our own DSP, and what we did was that we actually integrated with fellow other DSPs, to actually create an ad network whereby, of course, like I say, it's more or less like an ocean fishing for us. Everybody's actually connected to a particular ad network, and then ads are served. So one thing we did, or one thing we ensured, was that we actually had the right kind of partnerships to some particular publishers. It could be individual, it could be an aggregator, or it could be an individual publisher as well. What we did then was leveraging the partnerships we have with this network to actually service ads and campaigns. So that's one major thing we actually do at Bracken.
Okay, that's quite
Yeah.
interesting, Godswill. I mean, we did this for for a little bit of time, right?
Thank you for that.
And you, mhm.
Okay.
Adela, can you hear us?
All right, God. Yes, I think I can now. Thank you for that, Godswill. And that's quite impressive, right? That's quite impressive. All right, back to you, Bukayo. So you work directly on the product and strategy side. And I mean, so I'd like to know, what do marketers misunderstand the most about DSPs, like scheming? So from your profile, I understand that yes, you're one time the product marketing manager for Eskimi. So I'd like to know what you think the marketers misunderstand the most about DSPs, and how can they better unlock their reach using the DSPs. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear.
All right, great. So let's know the perception on this.
So I think for marketers, right? I think marketers do get it. I mean, those who get it, right? And I also think so. I'll speak a little bit from the Nigerian scope of view, and then I'll speak from a global perspective as well, right? And I'll speak again representing my new employer, PC, in this situation, right? But speak from my experiences in the past as a global products marketing manager at the
Oh, I see.
DSP.
That's fine.
So I think from a Nigerian point of view, marketers do understand how DSPs work when you look at people that majorly play either on an agency level or at an FMCG level, right? So fast moving consumer goods, the like of the Coca-Colas, the Mondelez, and the likes, right? They kind of understand it because one of the major KPIs for them is um, the consumer buying process for VR products is majorly that you can't buy online, right? People rarely buy online. You don't buy a bottle of Macallan most of the time online. Even you can buy from like Jokes.ng, right? Or you don't buy close up online or the likes, right? You need to go off the shelf. So one of the key things for them as a measurable KPI, it's one, brand recall. How often can people recall our brand so that when they need to make that buying decision, we are the top of mind for them, right? So top of the mind awareness and then measuring brand recall from that. So they will have a higher frequency, right? So these guys get it to some extent when it comes to that brand awareness and top of the mind awareness type of engagement. Also the consumer engagement part when you look at rich media creative to say how do I engage users in a differently rather than just using staple banners and staple videos, right? How am I able to engage these people differently today? So you look at rich media, you look like full campaign ads and people are able to interact on the banners, right? But I think some marketers also then need to look at other part of programmatic advertising and to say how can I use programmatic for retargeting campaign? How does programmatic contribute to my entire consumer journey, right? It takes about 4 to 5 times before a user converts most of the time, right? So people most of the time want to jump that curve of brand discovery and just go directly to acquisition, which I understand, right? If you're really looking at limited budget and things like that, right? You want to spend your budget in the most efficient way. But you need to understand that people also need to discover your brand, which I think a lot of people forget when it comes to psychology of consumer buying and marketing psychology. They just go directly for acquisition and things like that. I see that happen a lot when it comes to acquisition campaigns and some other marketing professionals do that. I think there's a place for brand discovery, right? And creative is quite important to your brand discovery. You need to make sure you have a creative on lockdown. How do you communicate? What's your messaging? What products? What market segment are you trying to go for? Are you trying? Don't necessarily go for everyone if you are not selling everything to everyone, like a necessity, for example, right? So you define that market segment, you choose to define how you want to do brand discovery. Then you also then understand the retargeting campaign that needs to be run to those people in that perspective. So I think that's a lot of times what people do mix up. You just hear people say, DSP is majorly for awareness and that sort of thing. But it's an importance of brand discovery, right? People need to discover your brand. People need to discover what you do before they're able to take that desired conversion action. That could be at another touch point. The touch point could be Meta, for example. It could be Google Ads, for example, as a touch point, right? There's different user touch points. It's no longer linear. It's not the typical brand awareness. Then you go to consideration, then you go into conversion, or if you use the staple old school, method of funnel, or using the AR of, and the likes, and come down to that, down to referral, right? I think it's now very intertwined. So what you want to be able to do is that you want to be present on DSP so that you are showing the right audience with intelligent targeting using interest or socioeconomic class targeting or placement targeting in terms of being on the right website and apps where they spend time. So that if I'm on the phone listening to music, your brand is right there speaking to me. If I'm on social communicating with my users, with my friends, you're right there. I'm able to convert or see your messaging at different points in order to take me to the desired result solve a problem. Remember, your product is being hired to solve a problem for a user from that perspective. So I think people need to move away from brand awareness understanding of DSP to actually understanding that it's a brand discovery and a contribution to the entire journey of a user. I think some other things would be also look out of Nigeria, right, and have an understanding of how DSPs work and what type of DSPs are best for your different objectives, right? You see very focused on e-commerce that has to do with full retargeting. You see some that are more focused on native ads, for example, that will help you drive acquisition campaigns over time. And we've seen this work, and that's something for us as a network. I think Jay mentioned it, and again I'll keep saying Jay because I call him Jay, right? So I know, but it's God's will in this situation, right? Um, but really, you have to have an understanding of what ad networks works better for setting objectives in your DSP. For certain purposes, right? So, for example, when we are working with clients that has to do with top of the mind awareness and a little bit of consumer engagement, I understand the inventory types that they need and the ad networks that needs to fulfill that purpose, right? If I'm working with somebody around beverage and alcohol, right? They typically cannot run campaigns on Google and Meta because of beverage restriction, but they're able to run with us as the DSP, right? Because we're able to then circumvent and remove those ad exchanges, which basically means marketplace, right? That Google and Meta already restrict and still get to users, those same users through another means, also still on their mobile apps and in their website, for example. to go into work with, let's say, for example, betting clients, and then I'm able to understand that, okay, I have some industry that speaks to this, for native campaigns like, Tabula as an ad exchanges and things like that, right? In terms of the understanding that we do have. So I hope this gives you uh, this better repositions marketing professionals to understand what DSP should I use and how should I use that, and what are the contributions of each to the entire consumer journey at different touch points.
Yeah, thank you for that insight, Busayo. I mean, you've been able to help us to understand that it's about brand recovery, yeah, and not just the reach, the impression, I mean, our conventional knowledge of it. Thanks for that. Okay, so I have another question, but this question is for the both of you. Anybody in no order can answer the question. And the question is, how do you balance automation with personalization in programmatic campaigns? And how do you balance automation with personalization again? So anyone, anybody.
Jay, please.
Okay. Yeah. So thank you, Adiola, for that question. That is a very important note while actually serving your campaigns. And of course, for automation, of course, we're looking at things like algorithm building and optimization. Of course, we also look at actually the creative optimization as well as trying to manage your audience segmentation, while your personalization for engagement might come in as your data-driven audience, contextual relevance, and first party data. But basically, the best way to actually balance this is actually first off choosing the right DSP, of course, and actually finding out, knowing its personalization capabilities. Like Kyle mentioned earlier, there are some restrictions on Google and Facebook as regards some kind of campaigns, alcoholic or the rest. And then, as an advertiser, you should be able to know, okay, instead of running my ads through that platform, okay, why don't I use a DSP or probably an ad network that can actually circumvent the process and then get these ads to the same target audience that we're trying to reach using Google and Facebook. you know Also, another thing is actually measuring the impact of the personalized programmatic campaigns based on standard metrics. Yes, as much as the standard metrics sometimes are being overlooked, we still look at things like how best these ads are actually doing. So you have to find a balance. You have to actually be able to know when your campaigns are not being optimized. Of course, the A and B testing and so much for creatives and the rest. But the best thing you have to do is to actually know which particular creative type, ad format. For example, I think some advertisers don't even know difference in terms of ad sizes, whereby contextual advertising, and you're placing a very tiny text in a spot. To me, as the target audience, all I see is just dot 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 dot, and then somebody will tell you, "Oh, I served the ad there. There's an impression there," and then it's not working. So you have to actually balance this and knowing what kind of creative, what kind of placement, what size to use exactly. This will go a long way in terms of balancing both personalization and the automation as well. So I don't know if Bukayo wants to add some other things to this as well.
Yeah, I think you really captured it right when you spoke about understanding how different DSPs work and then being able to do that into your objectives. So if you're looking at personalization, right? There's definitely yes contextual targeting, which is key. So you need to understand what keywords do you want to impute into the system in order for your ads to show one for those keywords or the context of the page that has something similar to that keyword, for example, right? Um, that's key. The second thing for personalization as well is then being able to understand how do you then keep the first party data, right? And the first party data in terms of the MAIDs in this situation. So MAIDs are basically mobile advertising identifier. Other identifier types are usually emails and phone numbers, right? Because we're quite conversant with that, right? So how do you keep those MAIDs and then retarget users across different channels, right? Because if I then see, for example, I run a brand discovery campaign, right? Videos and banners of consumer engagement on the DSP, right? Basically trying to reach a lot of people, right? I get that. I store the data of people that clicked on the ad. So the ad is trained to maybe 5 million people, right? About a million of them clicked on the ad. So I'm able to store the click data and the MAIDs of the people that clicked separately from the people that got to see the ads, right? And then I can have those MAID then exported to, for example, a retargeting campaign, right, on other channels. So, for example, I can do that on DSP again by programmatic, or I can install that on, on upload that, I mean, on the likes of Meta and Google, because they also do accept MAIDs, and then you're able to then speak specifically to that, because the intent has risen from just brand discovery to actually brand consideration. So there's some form of intent that you've been able to build from somebody just seeing the banners, but actually clicking to the page to seeing that. So you're able to do personalization at scale in that situation. For example, same thing goes for e-commerce as well. When people then do, so you keep that first party data, then you're able to then retarget them on channels like Criteo or RTB House, for example, or run an RCS, direct messaging campaign, for example, using RCS, which is Rich Communication Service, right, in order to hit your objective in this situation. Ah,
Yeah.
good.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Hi, everyone.
Hi, Eva.
Hi
Thank
there.
you. I don't understand this shaggy. Yeah, I'm sorry about that.
It's
All right.
okay.
Thank you
It's
for
all
your
right.
patience. Yeah, thank you. Okay, so let's get into the third party publishers platform. And I think this is one of the amazing part of this webinar. So I'd like to start with you, Bukayo. I know that you've worked with major brands across various sectors. Now, how do you determine the right third party publishers to partner with for these brands? And then what strategy do you use to maximize those partnerships? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Just to get you
Oh,
correct, right?
fantastic.
How do you choose the platforms to partner with, if I'm not mistaken?
Yes. Yes, because many people are looking at leveraging on this, but we don't know how we can choose. Like, what platform is good? Like, what are the criteria that you use, right, in selecting the right third party publisher partner? And then how do you maximize? What strategies do you use to maximize those partnerships?
Okay. So I think the first thing, right, is there's definitely partnerships, right, in terms of again, I'll try and speak from two sides, right? Because I lean more to the ad tech side of things, less on the client side. But I'm able to speak because I interact with both, right? Um, I think as a brand person or as a marketing professional, depending on any objective you're trying to understand, right? The first thing you need to understand is, what's your business goal, right? When you have clarity of what your business goal is, you are then able to set your marketing objective, which again I assume that you do have from that business goal. Then that automatically informs you into what channels to use. Now, when you have understanding of what channels to use, then there then becomes peculiar things that you need to look at for to say, okay, what's the brand safety in this situation? How do these people take care of brand safety? What's brand safety tools do they use? Are they using their internal tools like parentals like we use at PC, for example? Or can I plug? Do I need to get my own brand safety tool like double verify or IABs or modes to make sure that everything that is being delivered to us is actually concrete? Because there's something called ad fraud in quotes, which basically is certain websites are built for advertising, right? We call them MDAs, made for MFAs, I mean, made for advertising, right? You can have a banner in one slot, like, right, but like seven banners are on that slot, and every of these brands are paying for it. So you need to take care of that, right? How do you take care of brand fraud and brand safety, right? Do you need your tool, or do you trust the tool and ask questions of what tool they use, right, to do that? Next thing is thinking about clicks, right? How do you take away bot clicks and fraud clicks to say what are the measures they put in place to make sure that we don't get brushed with bot clicks and things like that? Because when you're buying for the open market, for example, when it comes to DSP, you need to be able to do that very clearly to buy premium and good inventory and good placements. The next thing you can also ask yourself as a partner is to say, what are the type of bids that are being done? So there's something again, I'll turn a little bit technical here, right? But there's RTB bidding, which is real-time bidding in the open markets. There's a PMP, which is much of a private marketplace where it's look at it this way. RTB is like going to on Igbo markets, right? And I can buy anything from anybody, and anybody can walk into an Igbo market. That's what RTP looks like, right? But there's a PMP marketplace as well. This reason is because you want to know the type of inventory they're buying, and what you are paying for is quality and not just bought numbers, right? So PMP is now, instead of going to Igbo market, right, you are going to say a boutique, for example, and a mall. And that basically means just a certain people are able to gain access to that place in that situation. And there's also something called guaranteed bid, which is almost like SSP, and that's almost like an exclusive only a direct partnership. So think of that like you're trying to buy something from an auction, a private auction situation where I can't just walk in, because we can't just walk in. We literally have to be invited. We've negotiated with those people so that when they bring in goods, we are the ones to majorly bid to it or get top quality situations in that way. So that's another thing you want to think about. It is what are the types of inventory and the categories that are being bought for your specific inventory for a brand. So you're taking care of brand safety, you're taking care of the inventory quality, whether it's premium or open market, right? Then you also want to think about viewable impressions, right? So viewable impressions or viewable clicks majorly makes if you have 1 million impressions, how many of them are actually viewable? Viewable is someone actually saw it for at least 2 seconds, right? In this situation. So you want to check the percentage of your viewable impressions to just your impressions. You can have a lot of impressions, but if your viewable impression is low, it becomes a problem. The industry standard for viewable impression is actually around 80 to 90%. Sometimes you can go as low as 75, right? But it should be around 75 to 85, 85, 90% for your viewable impressions. So these are the questions you want to ask yourself, right? As a marketing professional. Because again, majorly technically, you are majorly buying traffic. Yes, there are things like optimizations and things like that, but these are the things that will inform you. So when you go from objective, you understand the strengths of each platform and how to use that. Then you then understand the kind of traffic you are buying, and then how to protect yourself, and also understand what level of traffic you want to buy. Again, please remember we are looking at more premium traffic, right? You definitely have to pay more in those certain situations, right? But again, it's something you want to define before you get into the market and how you buy that as a professional.
I see. Thank you for that. Yeah, that was so insightful. I mean, yeah. Okay, so let's get more practical now. You've said a lot, right? You've talked about so many marketing, technical words, but let's make it more practical. So I'd like you to share, Bukayo, still on Bukayo, I'd like you to share an example of a tailored digital campaign you developed for a client using this third party or using a third party publisher, and how it impacted their overall marketing goal. Just think of something that's hands-on experience now. All right, thank you.
Yeah, I'm trying to think, right? So I think when we look at third party, right, I think one of the key things is like it's majorly looking at partners, right? Um,
Okay.
And so when we look at partners, it could be a DSP or it could be any type of inventory. So for example, we at PC, we have like an array of inventories that we're able to use and leverage based on the different objectives. So if you're looking for brand awareness and consumer engagement, we're able to push you programmatic and RCS and certain types, right? If you're looking for conversion and acquisitions, we're able to push you certain types of inventory. If you're playing in a certain space that is limited or restricted, the likes of lottery gambling, we're able to tell you, okay, you can't buy here, you can't buy here, this is where you can buy it. We can also provide that to you. But if you ask me in a tailored example, right, what I'll speak about is a situation where, see, for example, past my career where I was a senior account manager, um, one of the key things we did was to plan a campaign. So let me give an example of MTN Cameroon because it's been a while. And the major thing they were trying to do in MTN Cameroon was to drive user acquisition for their new app, their Uber app. I think we've seen it now in Nigeria, right? But at this point, it was not a Uber app in Nigeria yet. It was only, the Francophone region, so the Cameroons and the likes in those markets. And they wanted to be, I think they were number 5 then, and they wanted to be the top 3 um, um, users or top 3 MTN, I'll say branch, right? Because MTN is in multiple African countries, right? That's driven a Uber app acquisition majorly for them, right? And what we did was to run a full acquisition campaign, right? First of all, before we started, we defined what channels we wanted to use and how we wanted to use that channel. We also understood what's the consumer behavior in this situation to see how do people buy airtime today, how do people listen to music, how do people read sport news, how do people recharge data on the different offerings of the Ayuba app, right? So we clearly understood how the consumer journey for each use case, worked. Then the next question we then had to ask ourselves, how do we then switch people to move from what they're currently doing today into what we want them to do as a person? So think about the offer. Do we want to incentivize them? Do you want to bring a different angle to them in this situation? Once we clearly understood the offer to speak to each use case, again, I'm saying use cases because there are different, you know, use cases and offers you can push to the different audience pockets. So we had about 3 or 4 personas clearly defined in this situation before we started campaign. It's quite important to have your strategy and your on your tactics on lockdown, right? Before you then go into deployment and the likes, right? So once we are clearly understood what makes people tick and how we want to switch them with this peculiar offering we had, the next thing for us was to then define how do we want to make sure we track things efficiently? Because now we're not using one channel, we're not using one platform, we're using multiple platforms to be able to be present at the different consumer touch points. So, and it's a mobile app, so we thought about an MMP. So there was a need to install an MMP. MMP is majorly mobile measurement platform, right? It's for attribution and measurements to see how many installs and registrations and things like that do you get from each source. Because I can tell you, if you run just one campaign using a Facebook SDK alone and you're running Google Ads, you will see Facebook tell you 500 installs, Google tell you 500 installs, but you check your own backend and your app, you see 800 installs, and you'll be like, I can't be 500, 500, and I have just 800. That's majorly an attribution thing, right? Because both platforms are claiming credit for delivering that install to you. So you typically need to have an MMP in order to be your one source of truth, because that would then be able to help you to track across of the platform the last click attribution will who literally deliver this acquisition to you at the last step. You can have other things like somebody contributed, right? But the last click was contributed was given to you by just this platform and you can measure efficiently. So we had our flyer set up and properly integrated, right? Once we had that done, we then able to go full on into this campaign to say we're going to use DSP um, to drive a lot of buzz in the market because we can reach a lot more people. We want to be able to reach a lot more people and using mobile devices only. So we didn't target everywhere, right? We target mobile devices majorly in this situation. We target people that were in the MTN network because you can use operator targeting when you use the DSP to run campaign, for example. And we were able to run in offers and messaging specific to that segment. Another segment that were not an MTN, we also had a different messaging for them to switch to that network as well as also install the app. So that drives a lot of internet buzz. People discovered the brand, people understood what he did. And then concurrently, I think we started the campaign 2 weeks before we started the acquisition campaign. The reason we did that 2 weeks was to drive a lot of noise and drive a lot of brand recall. So there's something called frequency, right? Frequency is majorly, how many times somebody sees a campaign or each person sees it. So you can have a frequency of 3, 2, 4. So Bukayo, you want Bukayo to see it at least 4 times in that situation. In that situation, that drives a lot of frequency and brand recall for me to remember, right? So we started that 2 weeks first, and then by end of week 2, by week 3, we then started the acquisition campaign, which is majorly app installs and user sign-offs for the Ayuba app in that situation. And that really drove up the numbers because people now understood what the Ayuba app did. They seen driven curiosity in people's mind. I mean, I've been seeing this everywhere, right? And they see a creative that now speaks about them installing. So when they are reading the news on livescore.com, for example, or checking livescore, they see Ayuba. When they are on social media, interacting with their friends and they're scrolling to cheer, they see that to drive acquisition, right? That is basically focused on install the app today. We're able to drive a lot of installs for them, right? And we took them from number 5 in Africa, brought MTN Cameroon to number 2 by the end of the year, some years back, right? In this situation, to give you an actual situations of it, and we are using multiple touchpoints, right? From programmatic advertising to staple socials, and then also then retargeting campaigns using learnings that we got from Asflyer. So now we have a lot of people that are users. How do we need increase transaction volume or the average number of transactions per user to say if Bukai is a user now and it takes maybe 1 or 2 transactions in a month, how do I increase Bukai to do 5 or 4 transactions in a month so that I'm able to increase my money? Then we now have to do retargeting campaign, putting people into different segments of users based on their consumer behavior and then pushing them offers and messaging that matter to that specific behavior that we see in that app and drive up the number of in-app actions we wanted to do. But yeah, these were the campaigns, and this is how we work with the brand to bring them to where they are.
So much for that session, Bukayo. I mean, it has happened to me quite a lot of time. The Facebook SDK thing and Google, and I'll be like, what's happening? Google Analytics is telling me this. What's Facebook saying again? And the back end is giving another result. That's very, very. I mean, I must say that's insightful. Thank you for that. Yeah. Okay, over to you, Godswill. I mean, I'd like to know what criteria you use at Bracken Media to select third-party publisher, and how do you ensure effective collaboration with them?
Okay. All right.
Did
Thank
you hear
you.
that?
Thank you, Adela.
Oh, okay.
Yes, I did. Thank you, Adela. Can you hear me?
Yes, sure.
Can you hear me? Okay. All right.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. So, if I get you correctly, you actually want to know the criteria we use at Bracket Media to select third-party publishers. And okay, for basically, of course, everybody has their models and so, but for us, I think for me personally, as head of operations at Bracket Media, the first thing I look at is the technological compatibility. Can that publisher actually deliver what's the intent or what I want to do based on a campaign? Other things or other criteria you might have to look at might also be compliance. For example, of course, everybody knows you can actually put some kind of ads on some platforms, while you can. There are different kinds of publishers, e.g., some people don't actually know there are publishers that actually serve ads to adult sites. So for example, if I'm trying to run a campaign that would involve me serving an ad directly to an adult site, I know the kind of publisher. I already have I know they're compatible with the placement. I know what they want to give and how best I can utilize it. Another thing we'll have to look at is the publisher reputation. Yes, this is a fact and well-known fact. As much as there are a lot of publishers out there, some actually have a good track record and some don't. Uh, I think at that point that has to do with the intuition of you, the advertiser, knowing fully well your past experience with a particular publisher. Would this publisher be able to actually execute? Because you're being paid to do this, which brings me to another criteria itself: the pricing and the value. It's key because, of course, everybody's in this for business. It's not like it's a philanthropic activity. So the pricing and the value, I think those are my major four criteria I actually look at. There are so many more things to check. Maybe the ad inventory and the rest, but majorly I actually look at this. And of course, how best to collaborate with the publishers. Of course, you have to have a clear, defined objective. When you're actually sending out your brief or stuff, it has to be well defined and clear. So that there's no misconception or misunderstanding between the executables and the executions itself. Of course, another thing you do to actually make sure you're having your campaign, your return of investment would be habitual monitoring of the campaign itself. Checking on metrics to ensure that your KPI is actually achieved. Things, it could be the amount of impressions being served, it could be the amount of conversions, or if it's a first time deposit campaign, you have to regularly check on this. And of course, this also falls in line with the clear objectives being issued out to the third party publisher. Another thing is openness to publisher. You have to actually be open as much as you might not want to spill out everything, but you have to work with your publishers. They have to know exactly what you aim to achieve. Because if you cannot achieve the goal which you were paid for, of course, that means business is not actually moving for you. So I think basically those three things are things you can actually use to actually effectively collaborate with third party publishers. Bear in mind, it's a partnership. So you guys have to come to an understanding. So I think basically that's how we do it at Bracken Media Solutions.
All right, thank you for that, Godswill. I mean, I think everybody at this junction is supposed to know that yes, it's a partnership, right? And then you need to have a defined goal, and have it at the back of your mind that yeah, it's a partnership. All right, thank you for that. That was very great. And so back to you, Bukayo. Now let's talk about traditional marketing and these innovative ones. So I'd like to know how you combine traditional marketing channels with the innovative ones, And what metrics you prioritize when evaluating the effectiveness of your campaign across this innovative channel. Hi, can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Oh, great, great. So let's talk about the traditional and the innovative. Okay.
Yes. So I think typically, right, especially in Nigeria, right, a lot of people say, oh, traditional is dead, and I always laugh. I'm like, nah, traditional is dead. Do you know how many people? So again, always go to the data. It's something about data, right? It is doesn't respect anybody's feelings. It doesn't care about what you think. It just tells you what it is. Data
No,
doesn't lie.
that's
What
true.
usually lies is interpretation of data that lies, right? So I think traditional is quite important, right? You need to find that sweet spot and the synergy between both, and how do you then combine that? Because people are interacting. Again, you look at the entire consumer journey entirely. So you then look at it to say, where do I want to be on the traditional channels? First of all, what's my products? How does my product work? Where do my people that use my product spend most of their time? And where do I use traditional? Am I using traditional in the early stage of the consumer journey? Am I using it in the later stage? Am I using traditional to reinforce my messaging? Or am I using traditional majorly as a brand discovery situation? For example, am I using traditional as a direct call to action in terms of actually taking the desired action I want them to take? Or am I just majorly using it in a brand discovery stage again, for example, as in this situation? The reason I say this is because the data backs it a lot, right? We have about 220 to 240 million Nigerians, right? Depending on what your data source is today, right? And about 51% of that actually people that have access to um, what's it called? The internet, right? Today. Well, that's just the internet. But I can tell you that mobile penetration on the other hand, but not internet penetration, right? Mobile penetration sits very high, around 80, 85 to 90, if I'm not mistaken, right? When it comes to mobile penetration, right? Which means quite practically almost every Nigerian has a mobile device in their hand today, right? In this sector, right? And but if you have 90% mobile penetration, one, and you have half of the populace being internet penetration, but people on social are just about 38 to 40 million total. If you look at the percentage, right, it then becomes clear to you that if you say traditional doesn't work, then I don't know what to tell you, right? So you just basically need to understand what's your products, where do your own consumers spend time, and then find the integration between that and digital. The great thing with programmatic and DSP that uh, and that gives digital an arm or a leg is that you are able to accurately measure what you need to do. You are also able to systematically and scientifically scale what you're doing. So it's quite attractive, right? So you need to find that balance. Okay, so I'm not that guy that tells you, it's digital or nothing. No, I'm the guy that tells you to say, what's your products, right? What's your business first? So if you tell me you're betting, your business is betting, right? I'm going to tell you, good. So I can make digital work because digital is where people are actually going to acquire, that's where you're going to acquire your users. But when it comes to brand discovery, for people to know who you are, that you've entered the market and understand you, right? You need to do traditional as well. So you need to be on radio, you need to have billboards in strategic points. Are you also going for the entire Nigeria, or do you want to seek specific states and specific segments? And because the reason I'm saying this is because of experience, right? They're betting clients, they're betting brands that you and I, for example, don't know. And they are huge in if you go to southeastern part of the country, for example, right? Because if you need to properly understand what segments to stay in and how to speak to those people in that segment, right? If you, for example, your value-added service, right, you want to run, and again, I'm intentionally using non-conventional businesses, right? Because most of the time, everybody just talks fintechs, right, and conventional things, right? And I can tell you fintechs today, right now, because I've worked practically most of the fintechs categories, like digital banks, crypto, payments, loans. I basically worked in those categories, right? So I really know that, right? And I think everybody's quite conversant with that. But there are also other needs to make sure that you integrate traditional into digital, right? If, for example, value-added service, which basically means you want to sit on telcos, right? So you're trying to send value-added services to mobile users, to mobile phone users. Penetration is already high at around 90%, right? So you can just use DCB. DCB is basically direct carrier billing, right? Where people pay for your service using their airtime today, for example. So they can get to the see, live score or score of a match, or get added service like playing a lottery game, for example. So you still need to do traditional in that situation, because most of those people you're trying to acquire in these situations, Yes, a couple of them are smartphone users, but most of them are not smartphone users in that situations, right? So you need to make sure that you're at the right place at the right time using the OEMs integrations that you already have with the staple house tools that you do use today and the staple house programs like the browsers reducing their data usage. So you need to find that sweet spot. You need to find out sweet spot. Understand what your business does. Where do your own audience spend most of the time and spend most of your budget where they are, right? So if you're also, for example, um, let's use conventional things, right? Let's say, for example, it's a fintech brand, right? Or it's an FMCG in this situation, right? As an FMCG, you want to be at different touch points. You want to be traditional, so you want to have billboards. You want to make sure your billboards are there. The messaging is clear. It's easy to see. I see billboards were writing like a paragraph, and I'm wondering, people have 2 seconds to drive by. Why are you using a paragraph here? Or the print is very small. Just write one big thing and one big call to action. People know it. I see Bukayo's company. This is what they do. So when I go on my phone and I'm browsing and I see that interaction, right? I've discovered then while I was going to work, I'm curious, right? And then I pick up my phone, I'm browsing, reading Nairametrics news, and I see your banner in between that talks about Forex, for example, then I'm able to take an action immediately from there because I've seen it. I understand what you do as a business and you've driven that better. So understand your business objectives first, understand where your audience spend time, and then find integration with the channel in terms of, are you going to be 80, 70% on traditional, or are you going to be more heavier on digital when it comes to programmatic DSPs, OEMs and the staple houses, right? Very key to do that. Because the thing with OEMs and the thing with programmatic is that it gives you an intelligent and advanced targeting understanding as well as an extended reach. So the first is extended reach, right? You can reach a lot more people. And then the second is advanced targeting. You can target people more efficiently and effectively for every naira you spend, gives you the best outcome you're able to get. Right. So I'm not that guy that will say you just come and buy from me, right? I care about your business as more because I always try to also say we qualify our clients. I don't want a situation where we work with you and then you say, um, they didn't deliver what I wanted because all the person was focused on was taking your advertising dollar, right? But we want to be able to be partners, right? We're not looking at taking your advertising dollar. We want to be able to deliver the value. So we always ask a lot of a lot of discovery questions to understand the nature of a business and exactly how we play into that and what inventories and what advertising technology fits into that landscape.
Thank you for that, Bukayo. I mean, that's a win-win, right? Yeah, thanks for
Exactly.
that. Thanks for that. Okay. All right. So over to you, Godswill. So I want to get more practical now, right? I want to know how you integrate traditional and unconventional marketing channels. So if you had to divide, if you had to divide $100,000 marketing budget among traditional and these unconventional channels, what would your allocation look like and why? Again, let's look at it. If it's a fintech startup or FMCG brand, how would you allocate your budget and why will your allocation? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, okay, yes. So let's talk about allocating the budget across this channel. Thank you.
Okay. So first off, like what Bukayo said, it's not really about the digital. You can't really take out traditional out of advertising. It's one of the oldest form of advertising that's been of age, and yes, a lot of people still spend heavily on traditional advertising. So for me, for example, a lot of people think, okay, so I have $100,000 and then I want to split the budget and then I have to split it evenly 25, 25, 25, maybe to traditional, to digital, to publisher led campaigns and stuff. But I think the first thing you need to do is to actually understand the campaign objectives. This would allow you to know what your aim and goal is, what you're aiming to achieve, what you're meant to achieve. The next thing will now be to understand the audience behavior. That way, you'll be able to know how best you can allocate your budget. I'll give you a personal experience. I think I had to make my wife start using TerraCube, and this is because every day I'm driving past Maryland. I don't know if you're familiar with Maryland. There's this large LED billboard that I drive past and I have to, look at, and then I see the whole adverts, TerraCube, and it fascinated me, and trust me, I go home and I actually said, let's try this TerraCube. Top of mind awareness comes into play there. So those are things you actually have to look at in terms of allocating your budget. It's not just about, I have 100K, I'm going to do, I see a lot of people make this mistake. I'm going to do 25 on digital, I'm going to do 25 on social media, I'm going to do 25 on traditional. No, you actually need to understand what the objective is. You actually need to know where your audience are, how best you can reach them, leveraging on the strength of each of these channels. Some people, e.g., you see a lot of fintech brands actually do a lot of newspaper ads. There are reasons why they actually chase that. I currently work with one of the major fintech companies in Nigeria, and trust me, it's as much as you hear us, digital budget is this, you would hear the marketing manager go, whatever we're doing, please ensure the traditional budget is always there. So for me, for a fintech, for example, I might just allocate a basic $20,000 to traditional. Of course, 30 to programmatic DSP, another 20 again to publisher-led campaigns. The reason why is that publisher-led campaigns give you niche targeting. It goes beyond what's the conventional means of targeting. So publisher-led campaigns, I can give another 30, and then OEM partnerships. That's if it's for fintech, because like I mentioned earlier, I mentioned something about the campaign I did sometime with Transsion devices. I think over the air. I think I was trying to explain something about over the air, and whereby we can actually push ads directly to your device like an app. So it works perfectly for installs and so much more. We can just push the app. So for a fintech, I think my budgeting is going to be 30 DSP, 20 traditional, 30 publisher led, and 20 for OEM. But in the case of more or less like an FMCG or maybe a general state of campaign where the awareness is more or less the main objective, of course, I'll be looking at more or less a 30 for traditional. Why? You still cannot beat the fact that as much as it is not scientific, it is not too accountable, people get to see these ads, which are the traditional billboards, out of homes, TV, and stuff. People still get to see the ads while you're watching soccer, while you're watching your series and stuff on terrestrial and satellite TV. So for general awareness, it's going to be 30 for traditional. It's going to be still be 30 again for DSP, and maybe a 2020 for OEM partnerships and publisher-led campaigns. Bear in mind that when you're actually doing this to allocate your budget, you actually need to have your objectives well defined. You need to know what you aim to achieve. You need to actually now also understand your audience and the behavior, where they go to, what they do, where they spend their time, stuff like that. You also need to actually know the kind of ad and where to place them. You can't place, how am I going to put it? Like a gift ad, where to place your particular gift ad, your dynamic ad, that it would actually give you a better view, and stuff like that. So I think leveraging on each channel as well is something you need to consider before allocating your budget. It's not just a simple division of numbers and say, okay, I have 100,000, I'm going to divide it into 50-50 because I have to do 50,000 on traditional and 50,000 on digital. Bear in mind that we are actually being paid to actually achieve a goal. And of course, our partners are looking at their return of investment. Like Bukayo mentioned earlier, it's not about just spending your advertising money or your advertising dollar. I want you to actually come back to me to do more business with me. Remember, I mentioned something earlier about reputation of some publishers and the rest. You have to keep a positive reputation with your partners, of course, so that they come back and give you the money. You get salaries paid. You make both your clients and your bosses happy in the case where you're not the boss. So I think for me, basically, that's what matters.
Yeah, thank you for that. Right. Yeah, it's also a win-win thing. Happy for you, happy for the boss, happy for the customers. Great. That's a good one. That's a good one. So in a nutshell, you're going to allocate your budget, say 30 for traditional across board, 30 for DSP, 20 for 20 for traditional, 20 for OEMs, and 20 for publisher led, right?
Yeah. Pragmatic as well.
Fantastic. Right. Great for that, Godswill. That was so practical. Like you really help us to understand how we can allocate our budget and how we can channel what we can do on each platform and how we can achieve success, tailoring it to the objective, the goal of the campaign. That's great. Thank you for that. Yeah. So I'd like to know, I mean, for every businesses, for every individual, we always have challenges and opportunity. So I'd like to ask both of you in no particular order, what are some common challenges you've encountered while implementing the innovative marketing channels, and how have you successfully navigated them? Mm. All right, over to you.
Okay, so I think for me, one basic challenge when it comes to actually unconventional methods is actually explaining to the clients. Some of these clients actually don't understand how the process works, and you when you're supposed to do check-ins and metric checks and all. So one particular challenge is actually explaining to them, oh no, this is what we aim to achieve. This is how we intend to drive the campaign. Of course, basically there are challenges of deadline, timelines, and executions. But for me personally, I find it difficult to actually explain to some of these clients themselves because all they want to see is the result. They don't want to know how you get the result. It is just the result that matters to them.
That's true.
So that's one for me. I don't know. Bukayo might have so many.
My own is different. My own is when people run programmatic and say I can't see my ads. That one is a major one for me, right? Uh, I can't see my ads.
Okay.
I'm
I
sorry,
can't
man.
see
If you
my.
are my client and the call, I think it's just an opportunity for learning, right? But I think the reason is this because um, there are two questions, right? I always do this math. It's a very simple math question, right? There are 36 million total users in Nigeria on social media, right? Or let's say on Meta, for example, right? There are around 38 to 40 million total social media users in Nigeria, where each person has separate cuts in that. So basically, you have just 36 million people that you are able to reach on social. On programmatic on display, we have about 60 something profile users, which basically already tells you that that's like over double, right? That's the first thing you need to understand as a party, which means there are more slots for you to reach. If I'm supposed to search a room of 5 and I'm supposed to search a room of 10, for one thing, it's going to be harder for me to find it in a room of 10 than to find it in a room of 5. That's how you should look at it, right? For me to find something, if I'm looking for a pin, if it's hide and seek, for example, right? That's the first thing. When it comes, the second thing, it's understand the fundamental of how it works, right? As a person, right? Which means what you're trying to do is to target the users, to target your particular persona. And sometimes, or most times, really, you are not a target audience, which means you primarily wouldn't see those ads, right? Because you are not the ones we're targeting, except in a situation where you are the one that we're targeting. That's the second thing you should consider, right? Again, it's not one; it's a combination of all of these factors. Then the third thing is, whether you like to say it or not, it's your budget, right? So you need to look at your budget. Can your budget actually have the number of frequency that you need? And I'll again break it down with maths. If, for example, I think before we go to budget, right, we should explain how programmatic works, right? It's buying programmatically. Instead of me going to Linda Ikeji and paying Linda Ikeji for sport on Linda Ikeji, I go to Zikoko, I pay Zikoko for sports. I go to Nairametrics, I pay Nairametrics for sports. What programmatic allows you to do is it allows you to have access to hundreds and thousands of websites and mobile apps in real time to make sure that when you define the type of person you're trying to reach, the system is able to go and find somebody that fits that audience profile wherever they are on the internet, as long as they are on the mobile website and app, right? So if we are using the interest targeting, I target somebody interested in sports, and the person is maybe not even on live score, for example, the person is maybe on Truecaller, checking things. Truecaller has ads for spaces. He would see that ad because it speaks to that audience profile, right? But also because you have an understanding of that audience, you know they're also most likely going to be visiting sports websites like LiveScore, Mobile Score, FlashScore, and the likes, right? So that's what you want to consider to then look at, does that fit? how many inventory are really available to buy there. There are millions and millions for me to buy. We then lead me to the last question, which is the last or the question of basically points. The fourth comment is your budget, right? Um, if there are millions of impressions having saved daily that are available to be bought, if say for example you have a 50 million naira budget or you have a 5 million naira budget for programmatic, right? And I'm intentionally using these two cases, right? Because I think it's important for us to educate the client so we understand how this works and they actually see that these things are being saved, whether you see it personally or you don't see it, right? So the ads are showing on the multiple websites and apps, right? You can still decide to choose to say, I want my ads to show on, even though I'm buying on thousands of apps sites, I want these 10 websites to be there, right? So you can choose specifically 10 websites and put a budget behind that, which then that makes sense because you then get to see your ads if your budget is able to compete on that thing, and the bid on those kind of platforms are also not a lot because the bid of premium times or punch is not going to be the same bid of Bukayo.com. More people are visiting punch and more people know punch. So it's auction. More people want to get on that space of punch. It's more competitive than visiting Bukayo.com, for example, which means your price is going to be higher. The last point is then going to be what's your daily budget, right? If I have a 50 million naira budget and you have a 5 million naira budget, I'm more likely to see my campaign than you are, right? Because if you break down your 5 million naira into 30 days, right? So say you spread this equally, right? That will bring you to a daily budget of about 166,000 naira that you can spend per day, right? Total. But me with a 50 million naira budget have 1.6 million impressions I'm able to buy on a daily basis, which means they have 10 times more likely to see my ad than you are to see your ad in that situation, right? So I'm 10 times more likely because it's a daily budget understanding. This is in combination to the other factors, right? So it's a daily budget understanding, right? If I can only buy 166,000 impressions total per day with my budget of 5 million for 30 days, right? It brings me to 166,000 naira, right? And being very scientific with this for several reasons, right? Say 166,000 naira at the CPM of say 1,000 naira, which basically means you are able to save about 166,000 impressions is what you can buy total in a day as a person, compared to me. I have 1.6 million per day to spend. That means me, I can buy 1.6 million impressions on a daily basis. If the website has a total is serving about a total of 2 million impressions a day. Say, for example, Punch is serving 2 million impressions a day that is available for everybody in the market to buy. If I choose Punch with my budget, I can already buy 1.6 million of the 2 million. You are only available to buy 166,000 impressions. If I go to the website 10 times, I'm more likely to see my ad than you are to see your ad because of the budget size, because of the number of inventory, and also the bid you are bidding. Are you bidding low? Are you bidding high? It's also something called bid rates or bid wins, right? With bid win basically means that are you bidding to make sure you win the bid most of the time? If you're bidding too low, you will not win most of the bid and you most likely not win the inventory, right? But you see the percentages too as well so that you optimize. So I think it's important to educate clients. I think one of the major things to struggle with is I can't see my ads. And I think this is a good opportunity to really explain how that works programmatically than direct publisher buying.
I see. I see. Thank you so much. I mean, I can't see my ads, like for real. Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, thank you for that. So let's get into the future. So again, Bukayo, from your time at a scheming and now at Person Mobile, what trend are you seeing in how Africa consumers respond to programmatic and native ads across different devices?
Did you take a question again? I didn't quite get it. How are we seeing consumers, adopt, or I didn't quite understand.
Yes, programmatic and native ads across devices. Programmatic and native.
Okay, that's clear. So I think that when it comes to businesses, right, adopting programmatic and native ads, right? I can tell you that there's certain segments of businesses that already absorb it and they are well educated, as well as certain markets in Africa. So South Africa is the biggest programmatic market in the entire Africa, right? They did about $1.5 billion or so last year, if I'm not mistaken, for a market, right? So it's the most advanced, right? Uh, about 50 to 60% of the entire digital ad buying in South Africa, for example, is programmatic, which means around 40% of the rest is shared amongst every other person. Then 40% is being shared on Meta, on Google, on this, on all of that, on digital, on SMS. Basically, all those guys, right, are sharing remaining. Programmatic takes the chunk of the
Wow,
budget. So I think
that's good to
on
know.
the yeah, on the market basis, right, there are certain markets that are more matured, right, than lies. I also majorly say the West African, the English speaking West African market is more matured, right, than the francophone region in Africa, right? In terms of the spend when it comes to programmatic and DSP. Not that they don't do, but the penetration is lower there, right? And the understanding of even the practitioner is a little bit, it's developing in these markets. South Africa is way advanced even than Nigeria, and I'll tell you that they are way advanced in Nigeria, right? For that. But Nigeria is also there. South Africa has a market. Then there's also Eastern Africa, right? So if you look at the likes of Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania is quite also very good adoption of programmatics advertising. If you look at then on that's DSP, right? If you look at on the native ad side of things, I think native ad is widely adopted, and the reason I say this is because one of the key things that native advertising does and allows is that people use it most of the time for like conversion based campaigns. So the likes of buying on tabulas, on the likes of proxy browsers like Phoenix, like Opera already have native ad integration. So the distribution is already high because it's lesser data consuming. It's integrated into the user experience and less of an ad because it's seamless in between your user browsing on the website or on an app or experiencing that kind of situation, right? So I would say native ads as a format has a higher adoption rate because it fits into most of the objectives that people are looking to do, and also fits into multiple ad formats and multiple ad channels that you might be looking to do in the markets.
All right. Yeah, thank you for that. That's great. That's great. Okay, so over to you, Godswill, because of our time. Over to you, Godswill. So what future trend do you foresee in advertising, and how is Broken Media preparing to adopt to these changes? Future trend.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Adela. So in advertising, I think the future trends I see rising rapidly right now is more or less focus on personalized ads, not just the blanket ads anymore, where you just do a blanket segmentation, more or less like high personalization of ads. And that means if I'm going to talk to somebody who um, likes soccer, I know where to get to the person. Uh, Somebody who likes music, I know where to get to the person, stuff like that. Also, of course, we can't actually remove the Gen Zs coming up. Sorry, I have to use the word Gen Zs because they are more into content. They kind of assimilate content more, which actually is actually changing the dynamics of trends instead of banners and stuff. People are going into more of influencer marketing, influencer advertising, and so much more. We'll also be looking at things like the integration of AI, which is rapidly growing. I think of recent, a lot of people now have AI accounts on social media, and advertising is being done there. Trust me. I know of a company here in Nigeria that has over 20 accounts, and these are all AI on Instagram. And these accounts have, trust me, over 100K each and stuffs. So these are trends I see rising rapidly right now. And of course, at Bracken, what we intend to do is ensure we have the right partnerships. We don't lose out on trend. We, up to date on data-driven solutions. Of course, which is why it's more or less a community. I know Bukayo knows me so well. We meet at various places, events and stuff, whereby we share ideas and go back to our individual companies to actually see how well we can actually now induce such ideas to cope with the ever increasing demand of advertising and in the globe. It's not even a Nigerian thing now, it's a global thing. As Bukayo mentioned, there are levels of advertising. The kind of advertising we do here in Nigeria cannot be compared to the kind of advertising in some other countries. South Africa, for example, yes. And trust me, it even goes way more advanced when you go to the more advanced countries like China, like the US. So I think one thing at Bracken is that we're trying to like keep up with the trend. We go for seminars, courses, try to have partnerships with um, other bodies that can actually influence advertising and how we can improve our services as well. So basically, that's what we do at Bracken for me.
I see. I see. Okay, that's great. Great. Thank you so much for your time. So before we leave, I'd like you to talk about now over to you, Bukayo, right? So as a mentor in the digital marketing community, what advice do you have to upcoming marketers? I mean, let's look at these people. So what's your advice to the upcoming marketers about leveraging innovative channels like OEMs and DSPs?
Experiment, right? Understand your business. Understand what your business does, right? Understand what your business does first. Then understand what the business goal is, which will then define your marketing goal, right? But be able to absorb experimentation, be able to make a case of on experimentation to say you are looking at doing 10 to 20% of your budget should be on discovering new channels and understanding how that new channel can play into your objective. I'll give you an example, right? We recently became resellers for TikTok ads, for example, in Nigeria, just to make one, but actually in multiple African countries, right? So for us as a business, we now have TikTok ads not only are left, for example, in the market. So there are two partners right in the market, and we can do that across different regions in the country, in Africa, really, in Nigeria, South Africa, Kenya, some other MENA regions like Morocco, UAE, and the likes. So right now, for using TikTok as an example, right, the question is how do you want to leverage that as a business owner? A lot of people are using Meta and Google Ads, right? You don't have to stop doing that, but you need to experiment and discover new channels and find how that's going to give an extra edge into an untapped segment. The competition is still low now. The pricing are a lot better. I can tell you, like TikTok have like 30 to 40% lower CPMs than staple houses, for example. It's what we're seeing. So as a marketing professional, you want to be able to have a mind of experimentation, and but being able to make sure that your experimentation is not your entire budget, because you still need to use to keep on what is working. So you keep a little bit of the budget to do that, discover new channels. When you find what works, you can then scale that, right? And then the second thing is read a lot, not just Nigeria. And I keep saying that because I can tell you connected TV is going to be big, but like, no offense, but Africa is going to be left behind for a long time, right? Now, and the reason for that is because, I mean, how many people even have smart TVs in the house? First of all, before you then start talking about connected TVs, right? Because most of the connected TVs we have in Nigeria, for example, is just YouTube ads, Netflix, for example, on Prime, right? But those ones don't typically serve a lot of ads. Like YouTube ads is only serving YouTube ads. For example, you buy that through Google and the likes, right? And you can choose CTV when you want to buy that. But there are other types of connected TVs like Rakuten, like 2B and the likes, right? That is outside the country. If you want to make sure you're not a local champion, you need to have an understanding of what the other landscapes are working like on a global perspective, and how you're able to also make sure you keep giving yourself an edge on a global landscape and you're able to play across different verticals and different countries.
Okay.
Okay. Um,
Yeah, I think that does it all. That speaks it all. You mentioned something about the connected TV. I was discussing with a friend of recent, and people here in Nigeria just use their smart TVs for YouTube, basically. Basically, YouTube, Netflix, and that's all. But other countries, it goes way beyond. I think I get right here.
Okay, thank you for that. So again, I'd like to ask you, Godswill, how do you approach mentorship in the advertising industry? And what key lessons do you share with aspiring professionals?
Okay. Okay, so approaching mentorship for me, of course, first off, you have to develop yourself, skill development, which you don't think you know it all. Yes, I'm a guru in advertising and this and that. You still need to learn what is happening globally, trends that are in advertising, technological improvements that are being placed in platforms, marketplaces, and stuff. So skill development for me, it's one thing. Of course, for a case of mentorship, having the right mentor and the right mentee. Don't go and how do we say it? Says based on belief. Don't go and choose a mentor that would get you killed. Having the right mentor and the right mentee. That way, you can actually have smart goals. When I mean smart, not just the smart, measurable, achievable and stuff. Smart goals. Don't go and get killed. Don't overdo and don't underdo yourself. Also, facilitating networking. Like I mentioned, the industry is more or less a community, and truthfully, everybody actually has a touch point with every other person. As much as Bukayo is in PC Mobile, I'm in Bracken, we get to touch points, businesses, partnerships, and so much more. For example, if I want to get TikTok ads now, I can actually speak to Bukayo directly and like, oh, I have a client who I want to do this for TikTok and then work. So, like I mentioned, facilitating networking, it is very important in the industry. And basically for key lessons, uh, let me still start with my personal self. I think one thing I actually learned in the advertising industry, especially here in Nigeria, is your network matters a lot. You might not have everything, but you might just know someone who has that thing that you need. So uh, a strong network, of course, cultivate digital fluency. Try to always know what is going on. Don't just sit back and say, okay, I did Google Analytics sometime 4 years ago. And then, oh no, I think based on that, I have a certification. I'm a master of it. No, the way Google Ads were served 4 years ago is totally different from the way Google Ads are served now. Anybody who actually has a back end idea would know this. So you always have to be flexible. Also, you need to actually have a strong drive because, of course, it's a competitive industry. So everybody's trying to be the best in it. Everybody's trying to get the bigger share. So you have to have a strong drive. Personally, I think basically these lessons are just a general state of quotes that can help anybody in the advertising industry.
Wow. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Godswill. Thank you so much, Bukayo. And to everyone listening, that's to tell you that yes, mentorship and community engagement is, I mean, these people are open to it. And then again, it's not all about yourself. It's about meeting people, like Godswill said earlier. So it's the people that you have are your net worth when it comes to marketing. Yes, your network are the people that you have. All right, thank you so much. So we've gotten to the end of this session, and we're getting into the Q&A session. We're getting into the Q&A session. We have Faith to anchor this session. But before then, let's look at the questions. I think we have questions from people. So there's a Yusuf Olatoye. Yusuf Olatoye asked the question, and I will direct it to Bukayo first before Godswill. So he said, when should a brand develop their content marketing playbook? What cuts across all
Okay.
touch points? Did you get that? How should a brand develop their
Yes, I got that.
content?
Yes, I got that right. So when should a brand develop content marketing playbook? You should, depending if it's a B2B on a B2C brand, right? You should always develop it like way earlier, like way earlier. And you also need to remember that it will be a continuous way that you keep adopting, right? So, for example, if it's a sales enablement material, or it's a demand generation material when it comes to B2C, B2B in this situation, right? You will keep generating that because case studies will always keep coming, testimonials would always keep coming when it comes to sales enablement, right? Or one pagers would always keep coming when you're developing new products in those situations. And then when it comes to B2C, you then need to think about, okay, what kind of other things can I create? Do I create infographics for people to consume? Do I create one pager that we send to people to easily understand? How do I want people to discover me, and where do I want people to discover me? So you know if your efforts are going to be majorly based on search engine optimization, so you're really creating content for the web, for your blog, for example. But you're also thinking of distribution because I see people think about content creation alone, but not content distribution, right? So also thinking about distribution. So how do I distribute this content? How do we get more backlinks for the content that we're writing and to our own domain? So our domain authority goes up in that perspective, right? So if you ask when should the brand develop their content marketing playbook, I think from scratch, right? It should be done from day one. The only thing that will be different will then be what channels and number of channels can you develop content for simultaneously. That will depend majorly on two things. One, where the user spend time. Just focus on where people spend most of their time. Not, yes, they might go on other places, but where do they spend most of their time when they're thinking about such buying decisions, whether it's B2C or B2B in that situation. And the second is what resource do you have? Don't try to be on Google Meta. Sorry, I keep saying Meta. Don't try to be on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok. Also trying to do SEO. Then trying to do email marketing, and there are only two people in marketing, or you're the only marketing department, for example, right? In that situation, you want to really focus on based on the resource that we have today, right? If we were going to choose one or two things we can do efficiently that would impact the business and that would impact the objective, what are those two or one? What is that channel or what are those two channels that we can focus and double down with the resource that we have today to make sure we drive out the best result out of that?
I think there's a question for companies. For companies who are comfortable with established and proven channels like Meta and Google, what's the best way to convince them to explore innovative channels, especially since they desire results? Okay, I think for that, I think that question is coming from Oloa Pelumi. One thing is track record. Of course, when giving your pitches and proposals to companies who are stuck, with an ideology of uh, marketing, let's say Google and Meta, and they feel so comfortable, you have to actually show a track record. You have to come with data. It's not just about about conviction. It's more or less this is a track record. This is the data. This is what has been done. Similar case studies. For example, if you're going to a fintech brand and who believes in just running maybe Meta and Facebook precisely and Google, and you're coming with an unconventional, maybe publisher-led campaign, you need to actually showcase what has been done in with a similar brand, with a similar company that has an objective, more or less like if it can work for this brand, who you guys actually play in the same turmoil of water, it could and would, I pick my words clearly, it could and would work for you. Could in the sense that, of course, how you're going to execute the campaigns matter a lot. And would in the sense that based on the data that you have actually done campaigns for brands like this, it has worked. So I think for me, it's more or less data-driven decisions. I don't know if Bukayo has something to say to this question.
I can't. I don't think you can add any other thing to that. You captured it all entirely.
All right.
I think we really have come to the end. Definitely, if you need to join the Growth Hackers Africa community, just shoot an email or send them a DM through the links or through the channels on either LinkedIn or Meta. Right. Thank you very much,
Yeah.
Godswill, doing this
Thank
together
you.
with you. Sure.
Thank
Cheers,
you,
guys. You have
Bukayo.
a great
It's a
evening. Bye.
pleasure as well. Yeah.
Sure.
All right.
Cheers. Bye.